Is the United States losing its longtime friends? Is the America that once dominated global affairs now becoming a country the world fears rather than trusts? On January 8, 2026, standing at the Élysée Palace in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron delivered a statement that sent shockwaves across the globe. Without diplomatic euphemisms, he openly accused the United States of abandoning its allies and breaking the very international rules it once created. Macron is not alone. Just a day earlier, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier issued a stark warning to the world. He said the global order has reached a point where the powerful do whatever they want. Countries are increasingly being treated as private property of major powers. In his words, the world is starting to resemble a den of thieves. In today's video, we reveal how Canada and Europe are quietly building a new defense alliance, one in which the United States has no place. Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, broke decades of diplomatic tradition by skipping Washington on his first foreign visit. Instead, he chose Paris and London. For generations, it was an unwritten rule that a newly elected Canadian Prime Minister would first visit the US. Carney shattered that convention and told Macron, "Canada is the most European of all non-European countries." With that single statement, he made Canada's new direction unmistakably clear. Ottawa is placing more trust in Europe than in America. Why this growing distance? Donald Trump openly threatened to turn Canada into America's 51st state. He also floated ideas about seizing Greenland and imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. Trump repeatedly mocked outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, referring to him as a mere governor. The response from Canada was swift and sharp. From London, Mark Carney issued a blunt warning to Trump, stating that even thinking about occupying Canada is an insult. He also signaled that Canada is now moving toward canceling its F-35 fighter jet deal with the United States. Then came a historic turning point. On June 23, 2025, a date likely to be remembered for decades, Canada and the European Union signed a sweeping security and defense partnership agreement. The Pact covers everything from cybersecurity and artificial intelligence to joint military production. What makes this moment extraordinary is one crucial detail. For the first time in 80 years of Western security architecture dominated by Washington, the United States has been completely excluded from this new framework. The world's power map is shifting, and America may no longer be at its center.
Canada's new strategy has one core objective: reducing its defense dependence on the United States. For decades, Canada spent the bulk of its defense budget purchasing American military equipment. That era is now ending. Ottawa is rewriting its entire strategic outlook, and its destination is no longer Washington, but Europe. At the end of 2025, Prime Minister Mark Carney made a landmark announcement. Canada is joining the European Union's SAFE, Security Action for Europe project. This initiative is part of Europe's massive €800 billion rearmament and defense revitalization program. What does this mean in practical terms? It means Canada will no longer negotiate arms purchases alone. Instead, it will negotiate collectively with European countries, reducing costs while breaking the near monopoly long enjoyed by American defense companies. For years, U.S. defense contractors viewed the Canadian market as permanently secure. Mark Carney's new policy has shattered that assumption. From cybersecurity to artificial intelligence, Canada is now aligning itself with European standards and frameworks. Canada's Defense Minister, David McGuinty, has described this shift as a force multiplier. What is especially striking is that Canada no longer feels the need to seek American approval in this process. Washington has become, at best, an optional partner, rather than a central pillar of Canadian security policy. The tone coming from Paris and Berlin in early 2026 is unlike anything heard before. President Emmanuel Macron has openly questioned whether the world has reached a stage where powerful states can simply do whatever they want. He pointed directly to threats such as seizing Greenland or turning Canada into Amazon's 51st state, labeling such behavior neo-imperialism. Macron has urged Europe to reduce its reliance on the United States and pursue strategic autonomy. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has gone even further. In his view, Russia's invasion of Ukraine was the first shock to the global order, but America's conduct under Donald Trump represents the second and potentially final blow. According to Steinmeier, the very country that once built the modern international system is now actively dismantling it. This is not merely a political shift, he argues, but a collapse of moral leadership. The transatlantic world, as it once existed, may already be history.
The harsh speeches by Macron and Steinmeier were not spontaneous remarks. They were carefully calculated. At the exact moment when Donald Trump ordered U.S. Special Forces to capture Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro in extreme violation of international law, Europe chose to push back. The message was clear. America is no longer following the rules. It is now operating on the principle of might makes right. And the clearest example of this shift is Greenland. Greenland is a country of just 57,000 people, an autonomous territory of Denmark. Trump has had his eyes on it for a long time because of its vast mineral wealth and its strategic importance in the Arctic region. He has even threatened to use military force if necessary. When Trump was asked a blunt question, which matters more to you, NATO or Greenland? His response made his priorities unmistakable. He implied that NATO would be worthless to him if the United States did not get Greenland. Then came an unprecedented moment. On January 7, 2026, history was made. For the first time ever, 7 major NATO countries, France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the United Kingdom, and Canada, issued a joint statement directly rejecting America's claim. They stated clearly and unequivocally that Greenland belongs solely to Denmark and that its sovereignty will be defended. Think about it. America's own allies are now uniting against America's territorial ambitions. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney did not stop at words alone. He announced that Canada will open a new consulate in Greenland in February, a powerful diplomatic signal of solidarity with Denmark in the face of U.S. threats. Carney made it clear that even if America disregards international law, Canada will stand by its friends. The severity of the situation is reflected in a recent German public opinion survey. According to the poll, 76% of Germans now believe that the United States can no longer be trusted as a friend. Only 15% still express confidence in America, the lowest level in recorded history. The world is facing a deep crisis. The Western alliance that dominated global affairs for 80 years is now cracking at its core. The question remains, can this fracture ever truly be repaired?
Are these changes merely political? Absolutely not. The wall of distrust that is formed in the minds of ordinary people toward the United States will not be easy to dismantle. 75% of Germans now believe America is unreliable. In Canada, 77% of the public has outright and angrily rejected the idea of becoming an American state. This is not just hostility toward Donald Trump, it is evidence of a deep collapse of trust in America's long-standing security umbrella. Many believe that once Trump leaves the scene, everything will simply return to normal. Reality says otherwise. What we are witnessing now is something known as path dependency. Once Canada becomes integrated into European supply chains, once its military equipment is built to European standards, a quick return to the American model will no longer be possible, even if Canada wants to. Contracts have already been signed, factories are being built, and infrastructure is taking shape. These decisions will lock in policy for decades to come.
For the past 80 years, the United States led the Western world. From NATO command structures to defense procurement, everything ultimately flowed through Washington. That era is now coming to an end. Europe and Canada no longer see America as a partner, but increasingly just another vendor or supplier. They are constructing their own security architecture, one in which the United States enjoys no special privileges. When even America's closest allies band together to oppose U.S. territorial ambitions, such as the claim over Greenland, it sends a powerful global signal. American power no longer carries the backing of its friends. Canada opening a consulate in Greenland or joining Europe's SAFE project is not a temporary emotional reaction. It is part of a carefully designed master plan to permanently reduce dependence on the United States. The unipolar West is fading, and a new strategic order is already taking its place.
America's decline is not limited to the military sphere alone. When Donald Trump appointed Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to oversee the health sector, Canada concluded that America's healthcare system could no longer be trusted. As a result, Canada is now partnering with Europe on everything from pharmaceutical research to vaccine procurement. When lives are at stake, Ottawa no longer wants to gamble on politics. The same pattern is visible in trade and commerce. To escape America's unpredictable tariffs, Canada is restructuring its supply chains. Alternative routes are being developed through the Port of Churchill and the Hudson Bay Railway. For the security of the Arctic and polar regions, Canada is now coordinating directly with Nordic countries, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, instead of relying on the United States. Donald Trump made a major strategic miscalculation. He believed American power was so overwhelming that threats alone would force everyone to submit. He assumed America's allies had no alternatives. He was wrong. They did have alternatives, and they built them. Trump's America First policy has ultimately pushed the United States toward America Last. The statements delivered by Emmanuel Macron and Frank-Walter Steinmeier within just 24 hours of each other effectively announced a historic reality. The transatlantic order that governed the world since 1945 has come to an end. This does not mean all relationships are broken, but it does mean that America is no longer the automatic, undisputed leader. From now on, Washington will no longer sit in the driver's seat when global decisions are made. You can intimidate with military power, but you cannot manufacture trust. When America tried to dominate its friends, those friends chose independence instead. That is a lesson no amount of billion-dollar weaponry can undo. The world has changed. Is America ready for this new reality? If you found this video insightful, please share it. What do you think about today's shifting global politics? Let us know in the comments. Thank you.